The second thing that's odd about thinking about the LSAT as a measure of intelligence is that it's actually people with more cognitive horsepower who have the greatest slippage from their top score to their actual score. Now, this is an interesting finding of cognitive research, and I spend a lot of my leisure time reading about cognitive research because I'm always trying to find ways to help clients. And it's pretty consistent on tests of the type like an LSAT, not necessarily the LSAT. People with higher cognitive power slip more when they think that something is at stake than people with less cognitive power. Now, the people with higher cognitive power may still score higher, but the slippage is greater. Now, why is that? It's because people with higher cognitive power are using more accurate, but at the same time more difficult techniques to get to the right answer. And under situations of perceived stress, the difficulty of the technique starts to trump its accuracy. And so people make more mistakes than they make in non-pressurized situations. Now, why do they slip a little bit more than people with lower cognitive horsepower? Because the people with lower cognitive horsepower are using kind of approximation techniques. Let's just take an example. If the technique that you're using, the maximum accuracy is 75%, then you get 75% and you're using something pretty simple and you tend not to forget it, and so maybe you slip to 68%. If you're using complicated techniques that get you to 100%, but under the pressure of the exam you start to forget what you're supposed to do, well, then you may slip to 80 or 75%. And it's simply because the techniques that you're using are harder. What does that mean for your LSAT preparation? Two things. One, you should never think of it as a test of intelligence. Look, I got a perfect score on this thing on my only try, and I am not the smartest guy I ever met. I'm not even close to the smartest guy I ever met. But I knew what I was doing on this test. And I know people who have scored not so well on the LSAT who are pretty sharp people. So don't think of this as a test of intelligence. The second implication, keeping in mind that people with higher cognitive horsepower tend to slip more because they're using more complicated techniques. Don't use more complicated techniques. But make sure that the techniques that you use do have an accuracy of 100%. So what you want is you want the best of both worlds. You want a technique that will get you to 100% accuracy, but that isn't complicated.